Alrighty, I'm back and sooner than normal. So, for the Iron Man animation on my main channel, I of course had to watch all the Avengers films again, meaning that I've seen them probably at least 5 to maybe 10 times each in the last 2.5 years since the channel's inception, so that basically makes me an expert on all things Avengers. Just joking, I'm mostly just a movie buff, so comic nerds will probably still stump me on most trivia nights, but with having watched these films as many times as I have, I wanted to finally rank them on here. So without any further yammering, let's rank these puppies from worst to first. And as always, if you have your own ranking, feel free to leave it down below. I'd love to take a look. And stick around till the end of the video, because I'm going to be dropping a hint to what the next animation on the main channel is going to be. So, coming in 4th place is the second Avengers film, Age of Ultron. Now, I'm not someone who thinks this is a bad film. I just think it's the weakest sip of this 4-flavor Avengers soup. To start with the good, the action shots are actually really well executed and literally feel like a cinematic comic book come to life. The end battle looks extremely epic, and I love Joss Whedon's use of the camera sweeping around and following the heroes. The Hulk versus the Hulkbuster is a highlight and has a lot of great moments inside of it, especially when Tony Stark meekly says sorry after the Hulk spits out a tooth from his mouth. And the inclusion of Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver is nice, although this Quicksilver pales in comparison to the X-Men equivalent, but I think the Scarlet Witch is really good addition to the team, and Elizabeth Olsen does a good job with the role. I like the opening scenes with Ultron being created and killing Jarvis, and then the Avengers fighting him at the party, although that leads to the bad. Unfortunately, Ultron really stops feeling menacing the more time we spend with him. He actually seems pretty dumb, and the jokes he makes seem out of place. Likewise, the romance between Bruce Banner and Natasha feels shoehorned in, and Tony is acting more like himself from the original Iron Man rather than the more humbled self at the end of Iron Man 3. Well, actually, he's kind of more acting like himself from like Iron Man before he was even captured. It always kind of felt off to me. He just seems so negligent to mess around with the scepter and then leave it to then go on to a party. So all in all, this is a solid entry, but feels a little all over the place and somewhat patched together. And flying into 3rd place is going to be the OG movie mashup that blasted the modern cinematic universe addiction into the 21st century, The Avengers. Seriously, the success of this film created the modern DCEU, the now defunct Dark Universe, Sony's weird offshoot Marvel movie universe, and even the extended Wizarding World movies. Although for the most part, this is just a solid popcorn action flick with a pinch of Samuel L. Jackson, a slice of some good old mind control, and a heaping of superheroes beating up faceless aliens. And of course the charismatic Loki, of course. Obviously what works in this film compared to some of the other universes is the chemistry between the leads and their eventual coming together. Although it's a little bogged down by its own scope and clunkiness of its first half, seriously some of the dialogue is just plain bad and sounds more like something from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., not a $200 million blockbuster. Also, some of the infighting inside the group seems out of place. I never really got the Captain America line to Tony about how he's not one to make the sacrifice when things are on the line. Like Cap, he literally had 2 movies where he willingly nearly sacrificed himself to save entire cities. But once all that is out of the way, and Bruce Banner unleashes the Hulk, the movie really comes together, and it really just shows you how a satisfying 3rd act can save a movie from a less than stellar beginning. And placing itself into 2nd place is Avengers Endgame, the accumulation of 20 movies all coming together and reaching its peak. And for the most part, I think it gets there pretty nicely. The emotional bits in the last part of the film all hit really well, while balancing a bit of levity here and there. Of course, Tony Stark carries the film with his arc. As soon as it cut to like 5 years later, and I saw he had a kid, I knew something was going to happen to him. And then him seeing his dad and getting a chance to speak to him just once more just sealed his fate to me. Although I do really like that scene. Anything father-son related always gets to me. And that's why I like the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 so much. Likewise, Cap yielding Mjolnir? I don't know how to say it. Thor's hammer. Then passing on the mantle and giving up everything to be with Peggy works really well. Although the paradox with the time travel thing doesn't really make much sense with the time travel they set up and with the old man Cap ending. But emotionally, I think it hits really well. I also really like Thor and the Guardians of the Galaxy's chemistry. I think they fit really well together, and their ending scene in this just added that right amount of comedy. So I'm a little disappointed that he may not be a big part of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 because of the shuffling of the films. And also, unfortunately, the film gets a little bogged down by its own heftiness, resulting in an ending fight that works well when zoomed in on the emotional level, but when zoomed out it's just a little too overwhelming and just pretty messy. Also, the time travel solution is a little too convenient and somewhat makes the ending of the last film just feel less powerful, although of course they had to, you know, avenge, it's what they do, and the movie had to happen, so the universe could carry on. So altogether this film works very well in its moments, but the grand scope somewhat hurts it. And that leads to my favorite Avengers film, Infinity War. It mostly functions as the story of Thanos, and shows his thought process and everything, making him the most well-rounded villain of the franchise. Unfortunately, the younger Thanos in Endgame doesn't really come close to this version of him, but I really do love him in this movie. You also get all the main characters from the previous films coming together to unite despite their falling out, which I think works quite well after their somewhat more downbeat ending of Civil War. I especially like Captain America's returning scene and getting to see Hulk and Thor team up with the Avengers once more. Also, watching each Avenger take their best shot at Thanos time and time again, building to the inevitable snapping, really builds the tension extremely well, and watching all the characters dust away while the others watch in horror is an amazing cliffhanger ending that works really well emotionally, especially with Tony Stark and Spider-Man. So it may be a little bit of a downer watching the heroes fail and the villain win here. It really nicely sets up the next film and works extremely well on its own. So that's why, for me, the Avengers Infinity War comes in at number 1. It really did set up the plate for Avengers Endgame to really just hammer it home and win the baseball game. I'm not sure what my reference is. I'm not a sport guy. So what do you think? Does my list hit the mark, or is it not worth a snapping? Feel free to leave your own ranking down below, and check out the evolution of Iron Man on the main channel, as well as the other Avengers like Captain America, Hulk, Spider-Man, although those last two are now a little out of date. And don't worry, I see you guys' comments. One day I will probably update those videos. And now let's get to that tantalizing and titillating hint I promised for the next animation on the main channel. Okay, so it's going to be a horror sci-fi franchise that has the least amount of movies / TV seasons for any animation I've covered so far. But that doesn't mean it's going to be a short video either. So think outside the box, and if you figure it out, maybe I'll pop your name up on the animation at the start of the video. It's going to be a little while before I upload it over there. You guys know how it works by now, I hope. But of course, with all that said, I want to thank all my patrons for supporting my main channel and allowing me to do these other ventures as well. This time I want to thank Kelsey Rushing and Geraldine Bristow for joining the Patreon recently. If you'd like to support the main channel and turn this channel, there's a link in the description, and you can become a Teleanimated hero as well. Although I'm not charging while COVID is ravaging the world, it just doesn't feel right to do that right now. And until next time, I've been Aaron, and I'll tell you something later.